Archbishop Christophe Pierre, thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk about Pope Francis's papacy, these 10 wonderful years. What part of his papacy has had the greatest impact so far?
Well, I have been nuncio since, I was already a nuncio when Pope Francis was elected. And may I say, perhaps, the main thing for me has been the desire of the Pope, and also this determination to evangelize. And he realizes that there is a need of a new evangelization, which, by the way, is not new in the church. We heard about it.
That's right. And that encounter, it's based on something that you've said over and over again. It's based on dialogue. What do you think is the best example of this charismatic, Christ-encountering dialogue?
Well, it's, the Pope feels that there is an absolute necessity to encounter the people where they are and as they are. And at times, this is a source of scandal. But the problem is that if you read well all the documents of the Pope, if you listen to his homilies, the dialogue is crucial. It's very important. But the dialogue is not just for the sake of dialoguing. It's to express, our interest to the people and to help the people, to become aware of people who have something to offer. What we call the testimony of the Christians. And the aim is also to provide an encounter with Christ. So he wants a church which is dialoguing with the people in order to give the testimony of a presence in their life, which will lead them to conversion.
His papacy has also focused on the encounter between the young and the old. Is this likely to continue, and is it likely to be featured in the World Youth Day in Lisbon?
I hope so. I think, I think it's very interesting, because the Holy Father is very concerned about the young people, especially because, he has realized that, the difficulty to offer, the mystery of God's presence, in the humanity to the young generations. There is a kind of gap, even inside the family. The parents are concerned because they cannot transmit their faith, to their children, and it happens also in the school. It happens in the parishes. The priests are concerned, there is a lack of vocations and so on. All the problems you realize today, Yes. And there is a reason for that. There is a kind of cultural breakdown, at all levels. So the Pope wants a church which is very attentive to these dimensions, the need of evangelizations. But it's also amazing to note how the Pope speaks about the old people. He is himself an old man,
Yes.
He's young old man, But I think it's the Holy Father speaks a lot about the necessity for the young people to be attentive to the what you call the abuelos, the grandfather, the grandmothers, the old people, and the old people to be attentive to the young.
It's a beautiful encounter. Pope Francis has tried to foster greater diplomatic efforts with countries like China and Russia, even as tensions and differences build after the Ukrainian invasion, with the several problems that we've had with the Chinese government. Has this inspired you in your diplomatic role, the ability to continue dialogue while living in this great tension?
Yes, well, indeed, I've been a diplomat of the church for 46 years, in many circumstances. And this is why we are being sent into the world, not to condemn the world, to help the world to be better, And I know that some people are not happy, because, for example, in China, there is the Vatican has a kind of agreement, and we will never be completely happy with the kind of agreements, but agreements, in the world are imperfect, but we are on the way of change in the world. So this is the logic of dialogue. When you dialogue with somebody, you don't necessarily agree with these people, but as soon as you are able, to dialogue, something is changing. It's changing. So, for example, in the circumstance with Russia, with China, at times the relationship are difficult, but we don't give up, and we hope on the beauty of dialogue. And I think this is what the Pope wants. So we are on the way. And indeed, as you ask me, I've always been inspired, by the faith of the Holy Father. In spite of all the critics he receives, he's very serene, and that's the way. And let's go in that direction.
Do you have any insights into Pope Francis's recent public comments on gender ideology and why he felt compelled to comment on this again in a statement and in an interview? This is this public dialogue that he's having with the Church on gender ideology.
The role of the Church is education of the people. So if we find that in some ideologies are pushing in some directions, we as Christians, he as the Pope, he has every right, to offer, reflections. We do not necessarily condemn the people, but we indicate the way, and we help the people to reflect. I see the Church as a kind of educator of the humanity, and I like to see also the Holy Father a kind of great spiritual father of the humanity. Why not? This is his role. This is his vocation, and this should be also our vocation ourselves, wherever we are, as bishops, as priests. In our role, we should never give up. Deep reflections, because otherwise, we are there not to condemn the world, but to help the world and the people.
Well, we're grateful for those moments of clarity, and they give us great hope, as you mentioned.
Certainly. I always, it's interesting. I don't know if you have noticed during the last few days, everybody speaks about Pope Francis.
Yes.
At times, people repeat themselves. Like the journalists, they like to repeat themselves, over and over. But it's interesting. I've read most of the things I've been able to read. But you have also, I've heard the Pope Francis has given quite a number of interviews,
Yes.
to many journalists of all categories of journalists. And, these interviews are part of his magisterium in some way, given in a simple way, in a spirit of dialogue. But he has always expresses a few very important aspects. And, his reflections about gender ideology were given in a simple reflection with a journalist. But, we listen, and it helps us to think.
Absolutely. It's necessary, and we're grateful for it. Archbishop, thank you for your time, for your witness, and for the great celebration of these 10 years. We're hoping for the blessings of many more.
Certainly. Let's pray for the Holy Father and pray for the Church.